Borderline personality disorder. Today, we're going to talk about borderline rage, specifically when a loved one with borderline decides to just freak out, throw a temper tantrum like a 5-year-old. Because that's really what it is. Somebody was asking me the other day, how can I better handle borderline, avoid these outbursts, these times when they just fly off the handle for no good reason? Don't allow yourself to be in that situation. A tantrum is started. You're not going to be able to end the tantrum. You just have to ride that out. The best thing to do is to keep the tantrum from happening in the first place. Borderlines may look like adults. For the most part, they're very much like children and treat them as such. A lot of the same tricks you'd use for a child will work on a borderline. I don't want to talk about tricking anybody in this video because you can do it without trickery. What you need to do is establish firm, consistent boundaries. That is one of the best things that you can do. Before doing so, though, really think about it. Is this something you really, really do care about, or is this something you just want to talk about or think that you care about? Do you really want to establish boundaries? Do you really want to keep this borderline from freaking out and going off on tangents? You might think that you do, but it's a lot easier to just give in to their demands than it is to try to curb their bad behavior. You're going to have to be consistent. If you're not going to be consistent, don't even bother. Seriously, it's a waste of everybody's time to even go through any of this if you're not going to be consistent on it. You can't change the rules. The rules have to stay the same, and you have to be firm. Sounds really easy when you're thinking about it. We're going to set some boundaries with our borderline loved ones. We're going to do this at a time when everything is good. Well, as good as they can be in these types of relationships. You don't want to bring up boundaries and all of that in the middle of an argument when emotions are running hot. No, you want to wait for the right opportunity when things are very peaceful and calm and everybody is thinking level-headed. Then you can bring up boundaries. Best time to probably do it would be right after they know they've screwed up. Yet, at the same time, if you make boundaries at that time, they're just going to say yes to it, but they're not going to mean it. They never do. And so they will test you. They're going to test you anyway, though, so it really doesn't matter. But you must establish boundaries while everyone's clear-headed and there's no high emotions running. And at this time is your opportunity to tell them everything that you will not put up with. That is your boundaries. You will not put up with being yelled at for no good reason. You won't be put up with, you won't put up with just because they're having a bad day that they think you're their punching bag. Get it all out at once. And set up all the boundaries at one time, and you don't have to keep redoing it. Because you don't want to have to redo it. Because this is going to be locked in stone. Definitely for the borderline. And they're going to test you to see if you're going to follow through with what you say. There must be consequences for breaking boundaries. It's very important. And the best consequences for a borderline is lack of attention. They need your attention. They need you to validate themselves. That gives you a lot of power over them. Now, depending on your living situation will depend on how much you can actually do this. It's going to be harder for some than others. Best case scenario, you're not living together. It makes it much easier to set these boundaries before you start living together than to try to do it when you're already established and living together. If you're already living together, which you most likely are, well, you've got an uphill battle. So if they break your boundaries, what you want to do is you just want to, I would do some kind of cooling off period, an amount of time where you do not have contact with them so that they can think about all the stuff they obviously need to think about, because if they're breaking your boundaries, they've got issues they need to deal with. They need to figure out what needs or they don't feel are being met. And you're not leaving to punish them, and it's not a punishment, and you got to let them know that it's not a punishment. But you're not going to put up with being treated like shit either. You shouldn't have to. They're not going to treat you properly if you don't have something that's stern. Well, a punishment. Of course it's a punishment. But don't let them know it's a punishment. I mean, you can spin that shit where it sounds really good, like you're not punishing them. Honey, I just I think you need some time to really think about what needs you feel I'm not helping here. I'm going to give you a day and then I'll come back and we can talk about it and figure out how we can better work this out. Some shit like that. Don't just be like, well, I'm taking off for a day to punish you. No, but yeah, it's a punishment. Of course, it's a punishment. But no texting, no calling, no contact with them. Just leave for like 24 hours. They already know you're going to if they break your boundary, so it shouldn't come as no surprise to them. Once you've done that and you've actually stuck with it, they will know that you mean business. Their acting out will cause them to not get the one thing they want the most, which is your attention, your validation. Now, they break the boundary again after the first time. Well, once again, no contact. This time longer, though. Let's say you started out first time. Let's say you wanted to be a wuss and you want to start it out with like 4 hours of no contact your first time. And the next time they break the boundary, make it 8. Just keep doubling it each time until eventually they break a boundary and you never have to come back and see them ever again. Because that is a possibility. If they keep breaking boundaries and the time keeps getting longer and longer and you're getting up to like month periods of time, just don't go back. They're not going to ever respect you. It's either at that point, either accept being a doormat or just leave. It's that simple. But yeah, there's no cooling a borderline down in the heat of the moment, though. If they're already started a tantrum and going off, you just got to ride that out. There's no reason to like try to even bring up the leaving thing at that point because they're not going to put it together. They're not going to understand it. Like I said, you got to set all this up in advance. That way, when they do break the boundary, which they will, guaranteed, they're going to push it. Boundaries are made to be tested and broken. That's rule number 1. If you're going to put up a boundary, the first thing they got to do is make sure that you're going to actually enforce it. That's the fun part about boundaries. It really comes down to who's got more will. Are you willing to actually do what you say, or are you going to cave? It's really all up to you. There are some strong-willed borderlines out there too that will cut their own face just to spite you. I don't need people in my life that aren't going to let me manipulate them and use them. If they're going to set boundaries and want to be pricks about it, I'll go find some people that will be manipulated. That's how I roll. Every borderline's different, though. I don't speak for all of us. Do realize that they might just not put up with your boundary bullshit and they might leave you or take off. That's why I said, before you do any of it, think, is this really what you want? Or is this something you think you want? Because if it's better for you to just put up with the shit and not suffer consequences, anything worthwhile takes risk. There's risk in everything. And this is one of those things that's risky. There's no telling what a borderline's going to do when you push them, back them into a corner. But this is the best strategy for... This isn't just coming from me. This is coming from like actual like people that are trained in this crap. I'm just regurgitating what they told me. Have I ever seen it successfully work? No, but they say it works. So give it a shot. Anybody out there that's tried to set boundaries with borderlines, has it worked out for you? Or did it end up being a horrible disaster and you just wish you'd put up with the shit? Let me know in the comments section down below. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We're going for 3,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers, then we're just going to take over the world. That's right. We're going to take over the world one subscriber at a time. So be sure to be on board before... You don't want to be the last one to hit the subscribe button. Trust me. Until next time, keep on keeping on.